public and political opinion and support is obviously vital to this industry. You doubtless track this across the years as you've been coming to this conference, and things have been changing. So that's what we're going to be discussing now. Do settle down, take a seat, as we welcome our next panelists up onto the stage who are going to talk about public opinion. We will later on, before lunch, be discussing how political opinion is changing in relation to the nuclear industry. But would you now welcome on stage, please, from NuGen, their Public Affairs and Consultation Manager, Stephen Bray, Miranda Kirschel, who may be well known to many of you as President of Women in Nuclear, come on up, Miranda, and Jeremy Gordon, who is Editor-in-Chief of World Nuclear News. Come on up and take a seat on the panel. Oh yes, more clapping. Very good. Let's get some energy going. Now, the way this is going to work is we're going to have a quick video which is going to give you some facts and figures of a very interesting new survey about what the public actually think. And then Stephen from NuGen is going to unpack a little bit about what that means in Moorside, where they're working. Now, as you probably will know, Stephen Bray at NuGen is the responsible for the company's public affairs, and he was responsible for the recent delivery of a 10-week public consultation programme all over Cumbria, an important part of their prospective development consent order application for Moorside, and that's what we'll be hearing shortly. Miranda Kirschel, President of Women in Nuclear UK and co-founder of Women in Nuclear UK. We're going to hear a lot more about that and how important that is in the industry. The organisation only set up 2 years ago after a conference, I think about this conference here, to promote women in the sector, and this year held its first ever conference itself. Miranda is also part of the Capital and Infrastructure team at Ernst & Young's Energy Advisory. Jeremy Gordon, doubtless well known to many of you as Editor-in-Chief of World Nuclear News. He spent more than 10 years as a communicator in the nuclear industry, beginning as Deputy Editor of Nuclear Engineering International. He then joined World Nuclear Association in 2006 and launched World Nuclear News, which has, I'm told, millions of views across the world. It's a very popular subject. I have to say, from my own experience writing for the BBC website, nuclear and nuclear new build are definitely subjects which attract an awful lot of interest, and globally as well. So we're going to discuss what all this means and what the public actually thinks in a moment, after this short video which explains what the survey says.
I would oppose nuclear energy.
I don't really give it any thought.
I'd support it.
I'm 50-50, I'm not too sure.
I don't know very much about the nuclear energy industry.
Well, I know there's a lot of discussion about it still, and I don't think it's been resolved whether it's a good idea or not.
I don't think it's right to support that sort of type of energy.
We could use some of it, but in the mix, yeah, but it's just going to be how much it's going to cost.
It would have the same impact as taking half the UK's cars off the road. I mean, that's incredible.
If it's a question that should we use coal or nuclear power, I rather use nuclear power.
I don't know how the nuclear sector deals with waste.
The kind of waste products are pretty dangerous.
I have these kind of strange negative feelings towards it, and I think that's because of things I've taken in through the media.
When it comes on to scientific research, things like that, they tend to just want to give you a generalized overview. They don't really, get really into the practical, the ethical, the theoretical side of it. They just give you a generalizable thing, and you just have to swallow it.
Public attitudes to nuclear energy are incredibly important for the nuclear future in this country. And that's why the Nuclear Industry Council set up a work stream on public understanding of nuclear energy. We developed a strategy and have captured the best practice in public engagement within the Concordat that has been endorsed by all members of the Council and also other stakeholders. So we hope that this Concordat, by aligning ourselves behind best practice, will have a positive influence on public understanding and public attitudes to nuclear energy.
I mean, the big headline, in a way, from the survey, yes, a small, if not statistically significant, drop in support, but that 30% in the middle Jeremy, who say, we don't really know much about it.
It's frightening, isn't it? I think I drilled into the figures a little bit with Sarah of NIA, and it said 30% of people, or perhaps it was 33%, said that they knew nothing or nearly nothing about nuclear power. So basically, they don't even know that we exist. So what I draw from that is that there's a big opportunity to try to reach that 30% of people and try and give them a good impression. Somebody we saw in the video, one of the young chaps there, had just said, oh, well, when I hear about nuclear, I've just got a lot of bad impressions from the media. Obviously, we can begin to use the media to put a good impression into their mind.
We're famous for that, putting good impressions in people's minds. Miranda, where do women take it when, I mean, it's a huge generalized sort of question, to divide it, public consultation into sort of men and women, but there are some interesting differences. And when it comes to not knowing, women tend to take a more skeptical view, is that right?
Yeah, so again, NIA ran some surveys a while back that looked in more detail into why women are not favourable to nuclear, and they found that generally women are more sceptical. They need to understand more. Men generally accept the facts as they stand, whereas women want more information. They're more interested in some of the emotive issues, like waste came up there. That's one of the big concerns. And so really it's about reshaping the conversation, having the conversation to start with, reshaping it in a way that's going to be accessible to women.
So what are you encouraging the industry to do to make women more favourable towards your industry?
So I think it was really interesting hearing about Stephen's work. So I think what we do as an industry is we focus a lot on the areas around the sites, the communities around the sites, and we engage really well with them. But I think what we don't do is go any further afield. So I think it's about now reaching out to the rest of the nation and that 30% who don't know anything about nuclear, but also everyone else who is concerned about nuclear, but actually we're not even talking to yet.
Because Stephen, you've got almost two different constituencies, haven't you?
Yeah, well, if I might add to that, it's an interesting point about waste. And actually, if I think back to the people I spoke to and the waste issue came up, the guys, they typically had a history at Sellafield. They understood waste, they understood what it was about. The ladies, they, having been married and having people in the family, were working at Sellafield typically, and working at Sellafield latterly as well. Saw a number of female Sellafield workers come in. They question the waste, that final certainty about that solution. And actually, when you've got an audience like Cumbria, which has grown up with nuclear and understands it, if they are challenging you and they're dissatisfied on that final ultimate solution about waste, then I think you can transpose that into the national sort of psyche, and that might give you possibly some of the major issues that are preventing people from endorsing nuclear as a part of the future.
Jeremy?
Just to draw together a couple of things I just saw in Stephen's presentation, the issues that people were concerned about were the same issues that people are concerned about everywhere in the country. Impacts on road transport, can the health service cope with these new people, where are these people going to live? That's exactly what I see going on around me where I live in South London. And I think there's probably a kind of a match there with what Women in Nuclear are doing, and also the Concordat. Because one of the major elements of this communication concordat is to share best practice in getting nuclear workers out there to talk about what they're doing and explain that to people. So that's a new kind of communication that people really need to talk to them in the values that actually matter to them in a kind of a one-to-one way. And the last thing is that I think that research on gender differences in opinion showed out that men are more minded. If they're wondering about nuclear waste, for example, they're more minded to actually go and look that up and try to find the answer for themselves, and they'll trust the answer that they find. Women are more minded to listen to other people, and so Women in Nuclear seems to be in the right place at the right time.
That's interesting. You mentioned the Concordat. This has been officially launched by the Nuclear Industry Council. People can look up more information about it as an official sort of public awareness tool. Is that going to be a game changer, do you think, Jeremy? Is it going to help people to...
I hope so.
Put stuff out there?
One thing that really presses my buttons about it, it's got quite a few principles in it, but one thing that really presses my buttons is that it tries to build communication strategy fundamentally into the actions of all the companies that have signed up to it. The way I see it, there are two really fundamental things you need to run a nuclear power plant properly. And one is safety. You can't do it in an unsafe way. you won't be successful, you won't make any money, they'll take your license away from you. And the other thing is support and acceptance of people. If you look at Germany, they've got no safety problem, but they don't have acceptance, and they're closing their plants. So the resources and the energy that goes into safety is rightly enormous. I'd like a little bit of that to rub off onto communication.
Interesting. Safety first, maybe communication
second. Yeah.
Second, you'll settle for second. And Miranda, I mean, Women in Nuclear is very new, literally only 2 years ago after this conference. You're growing fast. I think you've got a challenge for the room on that, haven't you? But more seriously, do you think it can be part of this seriously shifting public opinion?
Absolutely. I think we as an industry have an opportunity to really get out there and engage. I think we need to start at home. We need to start changing the image of the industry in terms of having more gender balance within companies in the industry, within the organizations, and also then getting those role models out into the public and engaging more with the broader public. So the challenge that I have today is, as of yesterday, we had 940 members in Women in Nuclear, which is amazing. And what we want to do is, by the dinner this evening, we want to have 1,000 members. And we also said that we would have a bit of a profile piece on the 1,000th member, if we can pinpoint who that is. So if you can hand in your cards over at the Women in Nuclear stand by the entrance, please do.
There's a good plug. And as I understand it, despite the name Women in Nuclear, men can join too. It's a bit of a he for she thing.
Exactly. So what we really need is for everybody to support us, because this isn't about women. It's about gender balance, about diversity and inclusion, and it's about growing the talent pool so that we have the capacity and the skills to deliver all of our projects in the future. So we need the leaders of the industry, who are men at the moment, largely, to support this from the top, lead from the front, and get everybody in the organizations involved and supporting it.